Chapter 1. He was standing in my room on a Tuesday afternoon, and I had not let him in. I was 24. I lived alone in a flat above a flower shop. The only people who came into my room were people I had given a key to. I had given a key to exactly two people, my sister and my landlord. Neither of them was tall, with dark hair and blue eyes, standing at my window looking at the street. I had been in the doorway for 30 seconds before he turned around. He looked at me the way you looked at someone you knew very well. Before I said anything, before I moved, recognition already on his face, something careful underneath it. I said, "Who are you?" I said it sharp because I was frightened, and sharp was what came out when I was frightened. He said he was sorry. He said he knew it was a shock. He said he would explain everything if I gave him 10 minutes, and then he would leave, and I would never have to see him again if I did not want to. There was something in how he said that last part, like he had thought about it before, like the possibility of me not wanting to see him was something he had already made his peace with. I said 10 minutes. I sat on the edge of the bed. He stayed at the window. He told me what he was. He could move through time, not a machine, not a device, something he had been born with. He said it the way you said something you had been explaining for years and had not found an easier way to say. He said the first time it happened he was 11. He said by 20 he had stopped being frightened. By 30 he had stopped being surprised. He was 34 now. He looked it. He looked like someone who had seen a great deal. I asked how he got into my locked room. He said he had not come through the door. He had been standing in this room when it was still storage space. He had stayed, and now it was Tuesday and I was here. I sat on my bed and looked at him and thought about what he had just said. I was practical. I did not usually believe impossible things, but he was in my room and he had not used the door and the window was 3 floors up, and the way he had looked at me when he turned around had been the look of someone who knew me. I asked him one more thing. I asked why he had come here specifically. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said this was the 3rd time he had come to this room. The first 2 times I had not been home. He said he had been waiting for the time when I was. He left 10 minutes later, not through the door. He was there and then he was not. I sat in my room for a long time after. I did not sleep well. Chapter 2. He came back 2 weeks later on a Thursday evening. I was reading when the quality of the room changed, a shift in the air, something present before there was anything to see. Then he was there, at the window again, but this time he was already looking at me when I looked up. He had arrived knowing I was there. I put down my book. I asked if he wanted tea. I said it in a normal voice. He looked surprised. Then he said yes. I made tea. We sat at the small table. He said his name was Eli. He said it carefully, like he was not sure he had the right to give it to me yet. I said my name was Noah. He said he knew. I said of course he did. He told me about his life, not the dramatic parts, the practical ones, how he carried money from different periods, how he dressed for different eras, how he never fully unpacked anywhere because he never knew how long he had. He called the leaving the pull. He said it came when it came, sometimes with warning, sometimes not. He said it had cost him things he could not recover. He said it plainly, the way you said something true that you had stopped being angry about. I asked him where he had been. He said many places. He said it like many was not enough but was the only word. I asked what was the most remarkable thing he had ever seen. He thought about it. He took the questions seriously. Then he said it was a morning in a city that no longer existed. The light came through buildings built to catch it in a specific way. The whole city was gold for an hour before the sun moved. He said he had gone back 3 times. He said it never got smaller. I said that sounded beautiful. He said it was. He said most things lost something with each return. The extraordinary ones did not. I asked what made the difference. He looked at me across the table, the blue eyes doing something careful. He said he was not entirely sure yet. We finished the tea. He left. I stood at the window and watched the street for a while after, not looking for anything, just being in the room that had become something different. Chapter 3. I did not tell anyone. I had a rule about not talking about things I could not explain properly. I had made it when I was 8, and my sister had laughed at me for telling her something true I could not prove. I had not forgotten that feeling. So I said nothing. I went to work. I bought groceries. I had dinner with my sister. I was present for all of it. But something had changed. I noticed things differently: the light in the late afternoon, the specific sounds of the street below, the way the room felt at different hours. I had lived in this flat for 8 months, and I had not paid attention to any of it, and now I was paying attention to all of it. I thought about the gold city, the hour when everything was gold before the sun moved. I thought about the things that did not get smaller. I thought about the careful thing his blue eyes did. More than was useful, I knew that. I kept doing it anyway. He came back 6 times over the next 3 months, not regularly. There was no pattern to the days or times. 3 weeks between visits once, 4 days another time. I stopped being startled when the room changed. I looked up the way you looked up at a sound you recognized, attentive but not alarmed. He noticed this. The first time it happened, he paused when I looked up, like he was taking inventory of the change. Then he sat in the chair he had started using as his chair, and we talked. The chair had become his chair. I noticed that too. I learned things about him across the visits. He was precise with language. He said what he meant and did not approximate. When he was uncertain, he said he was uncertain. He did not offer confident versions of things he was not sure about. He was funny in a dry, quiet way. He said something once about the specific futility of wearing a watch when you could not reliably predict what decade you would be in. I laughed properly. He looked at me with an expression I had not seen before, surprised, and then something warmer than surprised. He was careful with me, careful about the space between us. He sat in his chair and I sat in mine, and the table was between us, and he did not cross the lines implied by that arrangement, without a clear sign that crossing them was welcome. After the 4th visit, I found this both respectful and slightly frustrating. Which told me something. Chapter 4. On the 8th visit, I asked him why he kept coming back to this room. Not to this time, not to this city, this room. I said it directly because I was a direct person, and I had been carrying the question for 4 months. He was quiet, not uncomfortable, taking it seriously. He said he had been thinking about how to answer since the 2nd visit. He said he had several answers that were all true, and he was not sure which order to give them in. I said to give me all of them. He said the first was simple. This room at this hour had a quality he had found in very few places across a great deal of time, a specific quality he could not fully name. He had found pockets like this before. He returned to them. The Gold City was one. There were others. He said the second was also true. He said I was here. He said the first 2 times he came to this room I had not been home. The quality was present but incomplete. The 3rd time I was there, and it was different. He said he had understood something the 3rd time that the first 2 had not given him. I asked what he had understood. He looked at me. The careful thing was gone from his eyes. They were just open, direct, carrying something that had been there since the 1st visit and had been very carefully managed and was not being managed now. He said he had understood that the quality he kept coming back to was not the room. It was me. He said it simply, the way you said something when you had decided the time for being careful about it had passed. The room was very quiet. The flower shop below was closed. The street had the quality of evening, in between the day and the night, like the pause between one thing and the next. I thought about 8 visits, about the careful space he had maintained across all of them, about how I had started measuring time around his arrivals without deciding to. I said his name. He looked at me. I told him I had been thinking about my version of the question, why I had stopped being startled, why the visits had become the thing I measured time around, why the ordinary life was fine and the ordinary life with him in it was something I did not have a word for yet. I said I had found the word. He waited. He was very good at waiting. I said better. The ordinary life was fine. The ordinary life with him in it was better. I said I thought that was worth saying out loud since we had apparently both been carrying some version of it for 4 months. He looked at me for a long time. Then he reached across the table and put his hand over mine, slowly, giving me every chance to not have it happen if that was what I wanted. It was not what I wanted. I turned my hand over and held his. His hand was warm, his fingers were long. The grip when I held it was the grip of someone who had been wanting to do this for 4 months and was being careful not to hold too tight. We sat there with our hands joined, and the room was the room it had always been, and also something else entirely. Chapter 5. We did not pretend the problem did not exist. He brought it up himself, the next visit. He came on a Sunday morning and I had made coffee and we were at the table, and he said there were things we needed to talk about honestly. He said he did not want what was between us built on gaps. I said all right. He said the first thing was that he could not control when he left. He had been working on it for years. He had gotten better at staying longer and at choosing when he arrived, but the leaving was not fully his. The pull came and he had to go. He had left in the middle of meals, in the middle of conversations. Once in the middle of a sentence he was trying to say to someone who mattered. He said it plainly and he did not dress it up. He said so I understood what I was agreeing to. Not constant presence, not reliability the way most people meant reliability, a different kind, the kind where you knew the person would come back but not when. I thought about it the way he thought about things, seriously and without rushing to a comfortable conclusion. I said I had been alone before. I said I had relationships with conventional reliability and had found that conventional reliability was not the same as being genuinely present. I said that every visit he had been more present than most people managed in years of proximity. He said the second thing. He said he aged differently, not dramatically. He was not immortal. He would die eventually the same as anyone, but the aging happened in its own way when you moved through time the way he did. He was not sure what the long term looked like. He had never had one with anyone. I said I was 24, and I could not think about the long term in the way he meant. I said I could think about this visit and the next and the one after, and I could be honest about what I felt, and so could he, and we could see what that produced. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said that was the most sensible thing he had heard in a very long time. He said it genuinely. He said he had been to a very large number of times and places. I smiled. He smiled back. His smile was something I had not seen often. Finding it felt like finding the piece that completed something. I said there was something I needed from him. He said anything. I said I needed him to not disappear without telling me. Even if he could not control the leaving, I needed the moment before it to be acknowledged. I needed to not look up one day and find the room empty without warning. He said he understood. He said he would give me that moment every time it was in his power to give it. He said he could not promise it would always be possible. He said it would always be the intention. I said that was enough. It was not a small thing. For someone who could not control the leaving, making it the intention every time was the most he could give. I knew that. I took it for what it was. Chapter 6. He started coming more often. Not because he had full control. He was getting better at steering. He described it once as learning to steer in a strong current. You could not always go where you wanted, but sometimes you could. He was getting better at sometimes. The visits had a rhythm, not fixed, natural. He was good in the mornings, quieter, less carrying things. He would sit with coffee and look at the street below and sometimes say things and sometimes not. The not saying was as comfortable as the saying. I showed him the drawer where I kept letters from people who were gone. The sketchbook from when I was 16 I had never shown my sister. The window that caught the light in late afternoon in a way that had always seemed important to me without my knowing why. He looked at all of it with the same attention, full and genuine. He showed me things too, the city he had grown up in before the traveling started, his mother who had not understood what he was and had tried her best with that, the way he kept journals across decades because they were the only continuous record of his own life that existed. He showed me one of the journals once, did not let me read it, just showed me what it looked like, years of handwriting in the same hand but changing slowly, dates jumping forward and backward in the nonlinear order of his life. I held it for a moment. I thought about what it meant to need to record your own life that way, to carry your history in notebooks because your experience of time did not automatically preserve it. I gave it back. He put it in his coat pocket. That evening we made food in the small kitchen. It was chaotic. Some of the appliances confused him and some delighted him, and his delight was one of my favorite things about him. He was not easily delighted. When he was, it was completely real. After the food we sat on the sofa. He was beside me, his shoulder against mine, his hand finding mine without looking. I thought about the gold city, the hour when everything was gold. I was in that hour. I understood now what he had meant about the things that did not get smaller. Chapter 7. He was gone for 6 weeks. 6 weeks was the longest he had been away since the visit started. The previous record was 3 weeks, and by the end of those 3 weeks I had felt the absence the way you felt a missing tooth, not constantly, but when you pressed on it. 6 weeks was different. I had no way to reach him. No phone, no address, no system. If he was somewhere in the past or the future, he was simply somewhere I could not go. I did not know if something had gone wrong or if this was just the nature of what his life was. I kept living. That was what I did. Work and my sister and running in the mornings and watering the plants and reading books. I was fine. I was also carrying 6 weeks of not knowing in a way that sat in the chest and did not move. I thought about what I had agreed to. I had understood it in my head, and I was now understanding it in my body. The gap between those two understandings was considerable. I did not decide to stop. I want to be clear about that. The 6 weeks were hard, and none of it changed my mind. It changed my understanding. I knew now what the cost was from the inside. I had known it from the outside before. Now I knew it the other way. He came back on a Saturday morning 6 weeks and 3 days after he left. I was making breakfast when the room changed. I put down the pan. I went to the doorway. He looked like 6 weeks of somewhere difficult. His face had the quality of someone who had been through something they were not ready to describe and were glad to be past. He looked at me and something in his face came apart slightly at the edges. Not much, just slightly. The controlled surface of him having a small failure at the sight of me. I crossed the room. He put his arms around me and I put mine around him and we stood in the middle of my room and the breakfast was getting cold and neither of us moved. He said he was sorry, into my hair. He said he had spent weeks trying to get back. He said he was sorry for the 6 weeks. I said I knew. I said I was glad he was here. We stayed there for a while longer. Then I finished making breakfast and we ate it and he told me where he had been and it was somewhere difficult and I listened and did not try to fix it. After breakfast, he was very tired. He slept on my sofa for most of the afternoon. I sat in my chair and read and occasionally looked at him and thought about 6 weeks. 6 weeks had taught me that the cost was real and that I was willing to pay it. That was not a small thing to know. I was glad I knew it. Chapter 8. That evening the room had the quality of a late winter night, dark outside and warm inside and small. He had slept and we had eaten again and we were on the sofa. He said he had thought about me every day of the 6 weeks. He said it was not a comfortable thing to tell me. He knew it was a large thing to put on someone. He said he was telling me anyway, because not telling me had cost him something across the months, and he was done with that cost. He said he had been to many times and many places. He had stood in moments history considered remarkable. He had watched things happen that changed everything. He had been present for things no one living would ever know about. He said across all of it, there was a specific quality of experience he had found in very few places, the feeling of being exactly where he was supposed to be. He said he felt it most in this room, with May. I looked at him, fair skin and dark hair and blue eyes not managing anything, just open, looking at me. I told him something I had not said yet. I said that for a long time my life had felt like a very good ordinary thing, not missing anything obvious, just ordinary, fine. I said since he had started coming back it was something else, not louder or more dramatic, more inhabited, more real, more like a life being fully lived rather than adequately managed. I said I did not know what to do with the 6 weeks, that was true, but I knew the 6 weeks were the price and I was paying it. He said he would spend every piece of control he had on coming back. He said it could not be a guarantee. He was honest about that. He said it would always be where he was pointed when he had any say in the direction. I said that was enough. He moved to sit beside me. I leaned into him. He put his arm around me. Outside, the city was doing its night things. We were inside. He said one more thing. He said he had been to the Gold City 6 more times since he described it to me. He said it was still not smaller. He said he now understood that it was not the city that made it that way. I asked what made it that way. He said the things that did not get smaller were the things that mattered. He said it was that simple. He said the Gold City had it, and a handful of other moments had it, and the specific Tuesday afternoon in a room above a flower shop, when a woman with dark hair and brown eyes had said 10 minutes, and sat on the edge of her bed, had it in a way he had not understood yet, and had not stopped coming back to find out. I turned and looked at him. We were very close. He looked back. I said I was glad he had kept coming back. He said he was too. Chapter 9. It worked the way unusual things worked, when the people in them were practical about the unusual parts, and honest about the hard parts, and present for the good parts. He came when he came. Sometimes I had warning, sometimes not. He came in the mornings and the evenings, and once at 3 in the morning when he had not been able to control the landing time. I woke to find him sitting in my chair reading my book by lamplight. I told him he could make tea. He made tea and we talked until dawn, and then I went back to sleep, and he was still there when I woke up properly. He kept his promise about the leaving. Every time he felt the pull, he told me. Sometimes he had 20 minutes, sometimes 2. Once he had 45 seconds and he used them to say one specific thing, and then he was gone, and I stood in the room with the thing he had said and thought about it for a long time. I told my sister eventually. She noticed that something was different about me. I told her over coffee on a Sunday the whole thing. She was quiet for a long time. Then she asked if he was kind, if I was happy, if I felt safe. I said yes to all three. She said all right. She asked to meet him. He met her 3 months later. He was very good with her, precise and genuine. He asked the right questions and answered hers with the same honesty he brought to everything. Afterward, she told me he was unusual. I said I was aware. She said she meant it as a compliment. The life we were building had gaps, that was true. There were weeks without him, and the not seeing was a presence of its own. There were things ordinary relationships had that we did not. What we had instead was different. The visits were more present because they were not guaranteed. The conversations were more honest because we had decided early that honesty was the only thing making the situation navigable. The time we had together was fully inhabited because we both knew it was finite in a way that was more visible than the finitude most people pretended was not there. I stopped pretending time was infinite. He had given me that without intending to. The understanding that moments were specific and worth attending to, that the attending was the thing that made them something rather than just the background of a life happening somewhere else. He stopped pretending it did not matter where he landed. That was what I had given him. A year after the first Tuesday, he came on a spring afternoon. The light was coming through the window at the angle I had always found important without knowing why. He was standing in it with his dark hair and his blue eyes, and I understood suddenly why the light had always seemed important. It had been waiting for someone to stand in it. I told him this. He looked at the light and then at me, and said he had seen a great deal of light in a great deal of places, and this was his favorite. I said that was the most remarkable thing anyone had ever said to me. He said he meant it. I believed him. I always believed him. In a year I had not found a single thing he had said that he had not meant. Chapter 10. 2 years after the first Tuesday, he told me something he had not told me before. The moment he had come back to the most was not the first Tuesday. The first Tuesday was the third time he had come to this room. He had come the first time before I moved in. He came the second time 6 months before I moved in. Both times the quality was present and incomplete, and he had not understood why. The third time I was there, the quality was complete. He had understood in that moment that the quality was not the room or the light or the hour. It was all three together with me in them. He said he had come back to that specific Tuesday afternoon more times than anything else in 34 years of moving through time, more than the Gold City, more than any remarkable moment he had witnessed. This Tuesday, this room, this light, May. I sat with that for a moment. Then I asked him what I had been doing when he first saw me. He said I had been standing at the window looking at the street below. I had not known he was there. My expression was the expression of someone pausing in the middle of a thought to look at an ordinary street and finding it sufficient. He said he had watched for 30 seconds before I turned around. He said in 34 years of moving through time, it was the most specifically himself he had ever felt, standing in a room on an ordinary afternoon, watching someone look at an ordinary street and understanding that this was it. This was the place. This was where all the moving through time had been pointed without his knowing. I looked at him, 2 years of him, and I still found him remarkable, not the time travel. Him, the quality of his attention and the way he said things he meant and the specific way he was in the world. I told him something I had been thinking about for 2 years. I said I had moved into this flat because of a practical decision about rent and location. I had stood at that window because the light was good and I wanted to see the street. I had not known that standing there was going to be the thing that brought someone back to me more times than anything else in 34 years of history. I said I was glad I had stood there. He took my face in both hands. He did it slowly, the way he did things that mattered very much to him. He said he was glad too. Then he said the Gold City was still the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He said it with complete honesty because he was always completely honest. He said beautiful was not the same as essential. He said the Gold City was beautiful and he would keep going back. He said this room on a Tuesday afternoon in the specific light was essential and he would keep coming back. He said there was a difference and the difference was everything. The room was warm, the light was doing what it always did. Outside the city was being a city. The flower shop below was open. Someone was buying flowers. The ordinary afternoon was being an ordinary afternoon. He was here, he had been here many times, and he was going to keep coming back. The moment he had chosen more than any other moment in time. I was in it. That was everything.